Blessed be the mind that is virginal with ignorance. This is a video about Fallout Equestria. Now, a lot of people have read Fallout Equestria, I guess, but not a lot of people have talked about it online. I need to stop procrastinating. So, let me go ahead and read this intro bit I've got here. Fallout Equestria is one of the longest self-published works ever written, coming in at 620,000 words. It is, as you probably guessed by the thumbnail and title, a My Little Pony and Fallout smash-up collaboration fanfiction. You know, I gave up being a politician to do YouTube. So, do take this video as a dire warning. Stay in school, kids. This has been a strange thing. One of the most bizarre pieces of fiction I've ever been pressured to read. You can thank the patrons for this video. I'm gonna do my best to not burst into tears. Obviously, spoiler warning ahead, I'm gonna be discussing the entire book. And if you're interested, go read the actual thing. I also have a few other advisories before we get into it. If you are sensitive to certain topics regarding that R word that rhymes with ape, maybe don't watch the video. It's okay to just go click off. And just sensitive to harsh topics in general, because this is surprisingly dark for a My Little Pony fanfiction. And also, this video is mostly meant to be listened to, so don't expect to have your mind blown on the visual side of things. Just put me on in the background, like, don't be staring at my face. Put me on in the background, go do your stuff, go do your work, and buckle your fuckles. We're getting into this. In April of 2011, a fanfiction author would burst onto the scene like a hobo with a shotgun, dropping the first chapter of a fanfiction. Like a fucking demon, this author, going only by KCAT, would go on to write the entire thing in less of a year. The final chapter of the story was dropped Christmas of 2011. There isn't much about KCAT online, but they did do one interview with other bronies that was a trip to read. We'll save that for the end. And through this, we get the idea that the author is a broke 20-something-year-old, so solidarity in that, except I make goofy videos online, and she makes sprawling and critically well-received lesbian horse fanfictions. I didn't think that would be a sentence I'd ever say. Enough about the background, though. You're probably interested in the story, so I'm going to start on that. Our story begins with... I can't read this script. I can't believe I wrote this video. The story starts with Little Pip, a mare who lives in a vault and works as a Pip-Boy mechanic. Of course, this is My Little Pony, and KCAT does not give a singular shit about our unfamiliarity with horse jargon, so everything is horse-themed. All of it. Vaults are called stables, and Pip-Boys are called Pip-Bucks, and other things will also have horse-themed spins on Fallout. Back to it. Little Pip takes a Pip-Buck from a member of Stable 2. This member of Stable 2 goes by the name of Velvet Remedy, and she's a musician. ? The governor of the stable likes this because it improves morale, which is dog shit because they live in a gray fucking box. Now Velvet, not having a tracking device on her because she just handed it over, just leaves. She hits that teenage father special, that yoinky sploinky. Now, obviously, this is depressing because they live in a fucking box, and Little Pip, already a loner and outcast and probably the only gay person in the whole vault, who also kinda has a crush on Velvet Remedy at this point. Problematic? Yes. Mommy issues? Yes. Relatable? You betcha. Also decides, fuck it, hits a yoinky sploinky, running from the governing body and leaving the stable. Nothing can go wrong. That's right, she's in a radioactive wasteland, because horse nukes are a thing. That was a sentence. So now we have our plot hook, which is good enough for me to put a little pin in this, and this main plot, and go to the background here, because one of the first things the main character does when she gets out is just dick around and inadvertently learn lost history. So how did the happy land of My Little Pony get fucking nuked? Easy peasy. The continuity does follow the events of the show, so that happens, and then Luna wants to start her own school, which she does, really far away, close to zebra territory. This won't be a problem. Zebra pirates kidnap some horses, and the zebra government's like, oh, well, not our problem. And then the horse government is like, okay, well then we're sending in, like, a Black Ops team to go get our guys back. And then the zebra government's like, oh, why would you do that? And then the horse government's like, fuck you, let's escalate. Which eventually leads to a refugee caravan going by the school. And then the horse military is like, this is horse lands, you can't be here, and shoots at them. And they respond with horse Columbine. That's right, all of those kids in that school get fucking massacred. I can't believe this is a video. Now, of course, after Horse Columbine is a thing, Celestia and Luna are like, oh man, we're terrible governors, which, yeah. A monarchy sucks dick, so. And then they just leave the nation in the hands of the cast. They're just like, oh man, you guys had that TV show. Government. Figure it out, lol. And this takes a turn for the Orwellian, with each of them, like, adopting their own department and, watching the populace and brainwashing them, literally. That's cool. That's a thing. This is the wildest video I've ever made. Pinkie Pie develops a meth addiction. That's right, methamphetamine, kids. Applejack is almost assassinated, invents power armor. Fluttershy goes fucking insane, and Twilight Sparkle is doing stuff that's extremely important to the main plot later, so you don't get to know what happens just yet. Back to Fluttershy. She accidentally does a cosmic horror, like, twice, by inventing mega spells, which can heal everyone, super cool, or can be turned into horse nukes. Not super cool. And what does she do? She's like, oh yeah, horse nuclearly assured mutual destruction. This is a good idea. It was not. They get nuked. This is a problem. This doesn't end well. Everyone's in the bunker now. Anyway, back to it. So Little Pip finishes dicking around and goes to wander, and she's basically hoping to find Velvet Remedy and talk her into going back. And as she's wandering, though, she fucks around and she finds out, immediately getting captured by slavers. And this is a wasteland, though, so the slavers get jumped by, like, more slavers, and then Little Pip promptly escapes. Runs the ones and frees the other slave, a stallion by the name of Monterey Jack. And you know what he does? As thanks for being saved, he robs her. Now, after this, our fearless hero, now murderous and sudden action hero, goes on to receive some guidance from a random possessed robot. This will mean something later, which leads her to a library. Cue a shootout in a fight that the main character seems unprepared for, but tanks nonetheless, and now our hero has rescued a ghoul and a child. Cool beans. Our next major plot point is that Little Pip sees a caravan and goes to help them. Of course, Little Pip is in raider armor, so she's promptly fucking shot, because they're like, they're gonna steal our shit! This is our introduction to one of the main side characters of the story, Calamity. Calamity is the dude who shot her, and upon learning that Little Pip is actually the hero who saved the ghoul by the name of Ditsy-Doo, he does sort of kind of feel bad, because, oh, Jesus Christ, I just shot an innocent person. This isn't America, after all. Other people tend to feel bad about doing that. This chain of events leads Little Pip to New Appaloosa, a name that would probably mean more to me if I knew about or cared for My Little Pony. But here, Little Pip recovers, learns more about the wastes, and starts adventuring with Calamity. Having never been exposed to the horrors of the wasteland, though, Little Pip is kind of horrified at all of it, because, like, what the fuck? Which is a pretty reasonable response to all of this, in all honesty. Now, of course, naturally, Little Pip decides to become John Brown of the Wasteland, which is to say, liberation through extreme violence, which, honestly, based. This leads us to Old Appaloosa, which has now become a major slave town. You're never gonna guess how this ends. That's right. Massive violence. Of course, this is Fallout Equestria, so a plot beat needs to smack you in the side of the head like a frying pan. So also while that happens, Little Pip finds Velvet Remedy acting as a doctor to the slaves, and also Little Pip just fights a demigod here and wins, because divinity can't save you from having a whole building dropped on you. Now, New Appaloosa did a lot of trading with the old one, so they're understandably, like, really pissed that Little Pip shot up their business partner. And they 8-6 her from the entire town. They just tell her to leave and not come back, which is funny, because banishment is a hilarious punishment tactic. We don't want you here anymore. Just get fucking lost, loser, you know? No, you freed slaves. Screw you. So again, though, this is Fallout Equestria, and a plot beat needs to smack you in the side of the head like a frying pan. So the gang finds an undetonated nuclear bomb in a farm. Having no fucking clue what to do with it, they hand it over to New Appaloosa for safekeeping. This won't go wrong. Also important to know at this point in this story, Little Pip has now developed a meth addiction, which in the horse world is called Party Time Mintails, which is a shockingly lighthearted name for methamphetamine, but whatever. Now that the nuclear bomb tangent is over, let's get back to it. Little Pip is on a war path. She figured out who's using all these slaves, a horse by the name of Red Eye, who wants to build a better future for the children at the cost of literal atrocities. So, Little Pip also wants to rebuild Equestria, but she won't do it with slaves, and she's not going to let Red Eye do it either, which leads her to Shattered Hoof and Junction R7. Red Eye's slavers have a plan to snatch the workers there. The workers there are being used to mine gems for definitely not nefarious purposes. There's also a band of mercenary griffins who've been hired to fight off Red Eyes, but want to do something better with the place. Little Pip fakes her death, gets directly involved with both sides here, and assassinates a dude who hired the Griffins in a half-baked scheme involving a sniper rifle, a stage rigged to explode, and having to pick up Velvet Remedy faster than a bomb. Which works, somehow. This is Fallout Equestria, though, so a plot point is going to smack you in the side of the head like a frying pan, because this place is actually ran by a fucking dragon who is absolutely none too pleased that someone is messing with his illegitimate labor camp that gives him more gems to eat. A battle ensues, and Little Pip, with a whole 2 weeks of combat experience and help from Calamity, successfully kills him. A dragon. So you may be wondering, what now? That's easy. Horse, New York. Why? Also easy. This entire time over the radio, because radio still functions in the apocalypse, there has been DJ Pony, and DJ Pony knows everything there is to know. And everything there is to get intel on. So the gang hopes that with some help from DJ Pony, they can get intel on Red Eye and everything else there is to get intel on. And as they go from, Junction R7, where they're now hailed as heroes and welcome home all the time, they go to Horse, New York. And on the way, there's a slight problem because they encounter more of those troublesome demigods. No, of course, this is bad because it's like 3 of them, which would be a problem until they meet the newest member of the gang, a Steel Ranger by the name of Steelhooves, because Divinity has nothing against the power of grenade launcher machine guns. The group, after spending some time to recover, continues on and arrives in the skyscraper that DJ Pony and also a whole other group of people live in. This is where it starts to get funny, because DJ Pony is another lesbian horse by the name of Homage. On top of liking the other lesbian horse in this story, she is also a huge quest giver. This is Fallout Equestria, though, so a plot point is going to smack you in the side of the head like a frying pan. This society is super wealthy, being fully establishment and a load of cunts. We hate the establishment around these parts. Everyone runs a store, everyone has to have a bunch of money. And also, they're super strict about the laws. And, well, who do we see there but the guy who robbed Little Pip all the way at the front of the story? Yep, that's right, Monterey Jack is here. And Little Pip's like, hey, asshole, you robbed me. And he's just like, yep, I sure did. And, naturally, the governing body of this place, Ten Pony Tower, decides that the reasonable punishment for this is death. Yep, that's right. So now this guy's going to be executed. So we get ourselves a little angst because Little Pip doesn't want this asshole to die, but he'd actually rather die than be dishonest. Also, Little Pip's meth addiction is getting really out of hand. Like, I wouldn't trust her around Grandma's TV bad. How does this resolve? In a very reasonable way, honestly. The gang goes outside, rescues a band of griffins, fights more demigods, because divinity means nothing to overwhelming firepower, and then comes back. Little Pip plans on stopping the execution, but then is stopped when Velvet drugs her and sends her to a doctor that can just undo addiction entirely, which doesn't make much sense, but okay. Little Pip's honest response to this information is to get very angry and then go have an entire chapter of lesbian horse sex. Yes, you heard that right. An entire chapter. Fun fact, at this point, I was working at a factory producing wood styles. And this is loud machinery, so you need ear pro, which means you got earplugs and yourself all day. You ain't talking to nobody on that line. Way too fucking loud. All the talking you do there is hand gestures. You say, like, water or shit, and that's it. That's all you have for communication. So for like a month, day in and day out, I have long hair, so I just have a headphone in under this and be listening to this because, oh fuck, I have to write a video about this goddamn book. And, of course, the day we get to lesbian horse sex chapters, the day the supervisor decides to accompany me. Headphones are banned on the floor, so I have to be acting normal as I'm hearing this shit. And it was, yeah, I kept it together, but it was hard. Anyway, back to it.
So, back to it.
After lesbian horse sex saga ends, Little Pip and co. depart on their next adventure. Remember the robot from the start of all of this? He goes by the Watcher, and he kind of has always been there throughout the story, having various robots around the wasteland. Little Pip, while in New York, also got some stuff from him, or for him. Yeah, also got some stuff for him. And now she and the rest of the gang are going to go deliver it. So they get a carriage, go beyond the constant cloud cover that hovers over the wastes. And when they finally meet the Watcher, it's none other than Spike, the dragon from the original My Little Pony show. Dragons are very long-lived creatures, and he just accidentally slept through the apocalypse and all of his friends dying. Which is really fucked up. Super swag on his behalf. However, before he went to sleep, he was entrusted with a mega spell that could undo the effect of horse nuclear bombs. A minor problem, though. It requires the bearers of the element of harmony, which Little Pip isn't. Which is really depressing, because there's no fix in the wasteland for you guys. So they just go back out, leave the cave, and carry on with their John Brown activities. Little Pip decides she will be infiltrating Red Eye's operation in Philadelphia. Or should I say Philadelphia? It's fucking Philly either way, man. What they plan to do, well, they don't have a plan. Fucking no plan. Their plan is that Little Pip becomes a slave. Which works about as much as the checks and balances system against the Supreme Court, which is to say not at all. Little Pip is just a slave. And upon realizing that she really done fucked up, she is fucked around, and now she's gonna find out. She enters a blood sport fight to the death for her freedom. Unfortunately, she does that against a martial artist zebra who promptly nearly kills her. Little Pip then devises an escape plan and takes martial arts zebra named Zenith with her. This plan almost works, but Red Eye uses child soldiers to emotionally manipulate Little Pip before then asking Little Pip's help in killing the goddess that's making all of these demigods the gang has to fight. He also has an enhanced task, if you will, because New Appaloosa gave the nuke Little Pip found to Red Eye, and now Red Eye is going to use it against Little Pip's girlfriend if she doesn't help him. Little Pip kinda doesn't have a choice here, so she agrees. Fallout Equestria, though, so a plot point needs to come from nowhere and smack you upside the head. Steel Ranger Civil War arc, that's right. See, Steelhooves, our guy, is actually a ghoul. He's lived so long that he was actually like the boyfriend of Applejack and father to her child. So especially when the Steel Rangers decide to start raiding and killing stables for their tech, Steelhooves is like, hey, what the fuck? But with extreme violence. This leads to Little Pip and the gang going on a trip to murder the Steel Rangers that have massacred Vault 2, the vault that Little Pip and Velvet Remedy hail from, and starting a civil war. Some of the Rangers side with Steelhooves, and others get murdered. After this, Steelhooves takes a brief break from the gang, and the rest start back on their journey. This is Fallout Equestria, though, so a plot point needs to smack you in the face. What is it this time? Easy. That eldritch god that has been sending near-divine beings to kill our cranky crew, she wants to strike a deal. All Little Pip needs to do is recover a book from Canterlot. Little Pip agrees, basically with the idea that she can use the book to double-cross the goddess. And now the gang is back on the road. The first stop is at the friendly town by the name of Arbu. Nothing will go wrong here, where a strange old man warns them that all these people are cannibals. But the gang, for whatever reason, opts to believe he's just crazy, because beyond a strange mark on these signs, these people are totally cool. Except for the basement of carved-up bodies. Upon seeing this, and having learned that the mark only comes from those who have eaten another horse's heart, Little Pip goes on a rampage and murders everyone with the mark, including children. The gang themselves, not knowing, are pretty horrified by these actions until they see why, in which they kinda understand, but ultimately the reputational damage is already done, and now people, like, are terrified of Little Pip, because imagine you're just some horse over the radio hearing, like, one day, oh yeah, so someone left a bunker and shot up a bunch of raiders, and you're like, oh, good for them, and then they're like, oh yeah, so someone, like, completely decimated a major city because it was a slave town, and you're like, huh, and then they're like, yeah, so that person just murdered a town of innocents before it's cleared up that they were actually a town of cannibals. It's pretty. Ooh, I wouldn't fuck with that. Anywho, on to Canterlot. Zenith reunites with her lost daughter, a shocking and rare moment of niceness in this book. So, of course, next we head into the extremely toxic horror show of Canterlot. See, the OG gods, Celestia and Luna, were strong enough to block the bombs, so the zebras released toxic gas into the town itself, killing everyone except for those who weren't so lucky and instead now get to live forever. They recover the book, and now the crew is back on the way to Maripony. They reunite with Steelhooves and Zenith, now the whole gang goes. Also, you already know what I'm about to say, which is this is Fallout Equestria. The gang acquires a nuke. Again. Using Zenith to smuggle it in, Little Pip hands over the black book and leaves, and then after this she nukes Maripony, inadvertently killing a lot of non-combatants. War crimes! Of course, this is to take out a high-priority target, so think of it whatever you will. And this is Fallout Equestria, though, so I get to explain another bit of world building, which is done pretty alright. You know that cloud cover thing I was talking about? Well, in the My Little Pony universe, the Pegasi live in the clouds. I think. And the Pegasi, watching the horse war down there, were like, yo, that's a problem, G. Not ours. And then when the nukes go off, they just shut it off. They control the weather to make it constantly cloudy and gloomy over the wasteland, so that way none of that can bother them. And they don't know about the mega spell to undo the radioactive damage to all of this, so they're like, they have their own plan to save the wasteland, which is violent takeover. And now that the goddess is dead and they don't have to fight a literal god, they're all for that, so they descend. And up starts a war. In the oncoming war, Steelhooves is murked. He's just decapitated. Rest in peace, soldier. The Enclave descends, killing everything left in Canterlot. Zenith is attacked by an evil plant and goes comatose. Velvet Remedy, tired of committing atrocities and more tired of watching her friend commit way worse ones, just leaves. Luckily, Zenith recovers, and we also find out Fluttershy is still alive, having been turned into a tree. Red Eye gets Little Pip and a Pegasus commander at a cathedral and tries to attain godhood by absorbing them, but it fails, and they instead blow the cathedral up, and it all comes to a head at the Battle of Navarro, a counter-strike on the Pegasi. Here, Spike joins the war, and this undoes a lot, because he learns how Twilight Sparkle really died, which is by being absorbed into the horse that would become the goddess that has been causing a lot of problems. It was an agonizing and long-winded death, and he goes berserk and burns Little Pip to a crisp. Little Pip, in critical condition, nearly out of friends and definitely out of options, enters her consciousness into the machine that controls the weather, which funnily enough Celestia is also sealed in. And here she manages to make it sunny again. And with Calamity alongside her other friends, she wins the war. And soon after that, the elements of harmony are all found, because it turns out that Little Pip's friends were the bearers of the elements of harmony, as well as a few side characters. So they use the mega spell and they save the world. Yippee! Little Pip just is trapped in the machine. Jesus fucking Christ. Let it be said once more that Fallout Equestria is one of the longest published works out there, and this synopsis mixes a shit ton of what actually happens in the book. If I covered everything in this video, it would be comparable size to Wendigoon's Blood Meridian video. And I'm not trying to upload 6 hours of video right now, because that would be like at least a month of just straight work. So, if you've watched this far, you're probably, mildly entertained. And this is a pretty good pausing off point, so time to get boring before I get into the analysis bit of this video, and take a moment to have an ad. So, who's the ad for? Me. As you may know, I have a Patreon. So that is the main way of how I get paid, because YouTube is super inconsistent. So if you want to directly support the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the Patreon. I have like $1 tiers, I have $9 tiers. It is really all about whatever you can do. And I understand because I myself am just a broke guy trying to get by, so if you can't, I get it. But it does come with perks if you do, so if you can, go ahead and think about it. If you'd like something not as much of a commitment as the Patreon, I have merch. It's always down in the link below. It's not the best merch, but it is merch. It's a way to show that, hey, I watch this extremely niche guy online. And lastly, I wrote a book. That's right, I wrote a book. I don't have the author copy with me right now, otherwise I'd be taunting it on screen. It is a brief collection of short stories. It is called Eternal, The Rot of the Flower, and Other Works. It's some of my best. I'm very passionate about writing. I love writing. And it's only like $7. So if you can, also buy that. It's a neat little piece of art. It's definitely very niche, indie, and underground, so you can be extremely pretentious to your friends and try to bag girls by doing that if that's the kind of dude you are, or try to bag guys by doing that if that's the kind of girl you are, or try to bag other eldritch entities if that's the kind of non-binary person you are. You know? Everyone loves indie stuff, definitely, so support mine, pretty please. Now with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and get back into the video. Now that we're back into the video, let it be said. Let it be perfectly clear. Let me be clear. Call me Gay Obama the way I'm about to say it. Let me be queer. I am not a brony. Not really my thing. I have subscribers and patrons who are, but that's not really my jam. Unfortunately, over the span of my YouTube career, I have interacted with brony media a few times. The disturbing fanfiction iceberg was a dark time for this channel, and not in a sexy way. Fallout Equestria is a cornerstone novel in the community too, so this speaks of the community itself, that this is a contender for best My Little Pony fanfic out there. Because in my honest opinion, it was okay. It was enjoyable. It had a lot of things it played around with, and a lot of interesting concepts. The character development was nice too, but I wouldn't call it great. Don't get me wrong, I was very pleasantly surprised to find that I enjoyed my time with the book, and aside from being evaporated on the spot every time every pony was used, or terrified of lesbian horse sex, it being a piece of brony media wasn't much to its detriment. But I do have a few critiques of the story that I'm going to deliver before I get more into what I think it did right. First critique, the use of the R word that ends in ape. I was genuinely shocked to find out a woman wrote this, purely for the fact that this word, the R word, to find out that grape, if you will, is used a lot. It's used in swear words or expressions of frustration. It's used as threats to female characters. It's used as actual female character backstory. And I have unique perspective on this, being an author myself. I can see why someone would go with it. Grape is a very easy way to convey something being terrible, a lack of humanity or civilization. It is a reflection of the very worst within sentient beings. But using it too much reflects a lack of awareness of the severity of it, a need for shock, and a lack of creative ways to express it. My issue is not that it was used, because this is a wasteland and horrible things do happen. It's believable that a female slave, Zenith, of a minority race would have been raped repeatedly, but that knowledge has less impact when we've spent like 25 chapters before this hearing rape threats or the main character using rape me as an expression of frustration. People don't do that. It makes for disingenuous character writing slang-wise and a lessening of the stakes fear-wise. Grape is not used in a way that aids the story here, because a usage of something that truly terrible can rarely, if ever, be used in a way that, like, aids a story, and at worst, it bogs it down, and I definitely feel like it kind of bogs it down here. Next up, we have written like a video game character. I don't know if this is intentional on behalf of the author, maybe it is, but Little Pip is absolutely written like a video game character, with absolutely no combat experience. They just become an action hero in less than a week outside of her home, so peaceful that she had never even trained in combat before. It's unbelievable at best that she just comes out of nowhere and starts being the John Wick of her universe. It's still fun to read, but from a logical perspective, the bricks aren't making a tower. This also ties into another small complaint, which is the pacing. This shit is off the fucking rails. Something is always happening. There is not a moment of rest or a time skip or anything. The entire story transpires over the span of like 2 months. These bastards have had no time to rest. Injury is explained away by magic, but the mental exhaustion must be unreal. My last major complaint is more of a personal one. Fallout as a series is of massive critique of capitalism and the standing Cold War systems. Fallout Equestria was really lacking in that. This probably has a role in the success, but it was disappointing to not see the politics of the old world more expounded upon. Rather than a complex build-up to the start of the war, it was pretty simple, and instead of long-term flaws in the institution, it was tiny flaws that undid the old world. And from a storytelling perspective, this works, but I was left with the impression that if the author expanded on these systems more, Fallout Equestria could have been so much more. That all discussed, I'm gonna now discuss where I think this... Sorry, I thought I heard someone knocking. Now that this is all taken care of, I'm gonna discuss what I think this story got right. The themes of My Little Pony. That's a sentence I've said. My Little Pony and Fallout blend shockingly well together, probably because friendship and kindness and humanity are all the more important when there is no society, and those things are the things that make us. And ultimately, Fallout Equestria is a story about a group of friends trying to do their best in a wasteland. As much as I would have loved to see this be a two-way road with the themes of anti-capitalism and staunch anti-arms race being applied to the old world, this story is very well handled. The themes of the show and the reality of the post-war wasteland, it all just fits nicely together. Another thing, addiction. Fallout Equestria very surprisingly does an excellent job at portraying addiction. The main character, as she goes through it, does it because she genuinely feels like she's better on meth rather than off, and by the time she notices it's a problem, she's already willing to steal Grandma's TV for a hit. And the entire time it's phrased in such a way that you almost find yourself agreeing with the character about her addiction. Another thing, consequences. Even though Little Pip does an unbelievable amount of tomfuckery, it also comes with consequences. She frequently goes through radiation poisoning, life-threatening injuries, a shit ton of trauma. Were it not for the fact that the magic system exists and that one of the most skilled medics in the land is friends with her, she would have been dead dozens of times over. When Little Pip does some seriously stupid shit, she gets some seriously major consequences. The fuck around and find out scale is respected here, and I'm all for that. And then lastly is magic. Magic and post-apocalypse is something I really like myself. Those two things scratch a little itch in my brain and work very well together. Maybe it's the inherent themes that even wonder can survive the end of everything, or maybe it's just because Fireball is fucking cool. The rest it does at a perfectly good level. What I highlighted here is just what I really liked. Now on to the elephant in the room, which is the nature of the work itself. What the hell is going on with Brony art? As we have established, my prior interactions with the fandom, not good. But ultimately it comes down to the question of how much ridicule do these guys deserve. Now, the weirdos who wrote Cupcakes or Sweet Apple Massacres, the other things I have read, and I promise I don't make a habit out of this, I was just very stubborn for the disturbing fanfictions iceberg, so go watch that video if you haven't. It's old, but it's one of my very few non-stinky old videos. Those guys deserve a lot of shit. Not enough for me to, wish serious harm upon them, but I hope they stub their toe every day. I hope when they feel the need to sneeze, they can't. I hope when they're busting a nut, the orgasm comes too fast and they don't get to enjoy the full extent of it. That is how much of a hater I am. But the average brony didn't write that stuff and probably doesn't care. And if you don't know what that stuff is, good for you. Stay in the dark on that, or go watch a video where I discuss it if you'd like. Does this mean that I'm willing to associate with the brony community? Nah, but I'm also not going to mock this just for being a brony piece of art. A lot of them definitely are freaks, and some of them are just people who enjoy horse stories. Not that deep. Last thing I'm going to touch on in this video is an interview with the author. See where I did that, where I mentioned it like 35 minutes ago. This interview goes into quite a few things, like how she became a brony, which is she mocked a friend for being one, and then he challenged her to watch 5 episodes of the show and then keep mocking her if she really didn't like it, and then she did like it. Luckily for me, tried and proven again and again, I am immune to this. Not my strokes, not my folks. Enjoy the cheeky metaphor there. Here, they also mention being between stories, but it's been like a decade since Fallout Equestria came out, so I don't think she's done anything else. So rest in peace to that. She also is surprisingly humble about the whole thing, but of course, Brony's gonna brony, and a gag written into the interview is a co-host of the show asking for the author's hand in marriage because she's a woman. The duality of man, am I right? Anyway, I think I'm just about done here, so... Oh my god. I guess it's fitting that I make the lesbian horse sex video during Pride Month. So yeah, happy that, by the way. I've been celebrating myself. I don't have any of my flags back in the kitchen. I mean, look at me. You know I'm a fruit. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far and you aren't subscribed, go ahead and, for the love of God, just do it. Just push the button. You and I both have been through this whole thing. If you are subscribed and you'd like to help out more, there's merch, there's my book, buy my book, and there's the Patreon. All of that's always in the description down below. Huge thanks to Saki for the thumbnails, and in the meantime, yeah, just have a great time, take care, hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you with the next one. It's not going to be My Little Pony themed, so memento mori.